Okay, welcome to another segment of the Real Mike Pittman Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pittman, and joining me on the show today is Michael Burns. Michael is the president of Northside Community Housing in St. Louis, Missouri. And how you
hmm
doing today, Mike?
Doing real good. Doing real good.
Good, good. Um, housing is something that's always been dear to my heart, and I'm very intrigued whenever I see groups and individuals that are doing housing, especially when you talk about underserved areas.
Uh-huh.
So in saying that, tell us just a little bit about Northside Community Housing. I have several questions for you, so you don't really have to be real detailed, but
Okay.
give us a little precursor, if you will.
All right. Well, Northside Community Housing actually formed as a committee. It was a housing committee of a local nonprofit called Northside Youth and Senior Services. At that time, in the 70s, it was known as Northside Community Center. And it came out of a need where a Catholic priest out of a church called St. Matthew's, he was the head of this organization that had this committee, this housing committee at Northside Community Center. And they were going into homes, finding out that there was a need for food. There was a lack of nourishment. A lot of elderly people were actually trading off uh, medicine and really wasn't spending a lot of money on food. They were actually eating things like cat food to cut down on costs.
Mm,
And they saw that need and they helped those folks. And that program eventually turned into what we know as Meals on Wheels.
mm,
So they did very well in that particular program. But then going into these homes, they saw that the homes were not really in great condition. So they decided to start a housing committee. And this housing committee is what eventually turned out to be Northside Community Housing as a separate 501c3 that actually got started officially around 2003.
okay, so basically, your organization is 20 years old, I take it, roughly around.
Yes, but we actually have been in the real estate business under Northside Community Center,
Okay.
and so it's as a nonprofit, yeah, a little over 20 years, but as a entity actually doing housing under our parent organization is this is actually the 46th year.
Oh, wow. Now, tell us a little bit about your background in terms of how you came to work for an organization, to be the director of an organization such as this, and what has been your previous history.
Well, I've actually been in housing, early childhood education, healthcare, during my entire career. Next year, 2024, will actually be my 40th year of being a real estate broker in the state of Missouri as well as Illinois. So I actually got my start working for a small for-profit real estate company. It was called Dolores C. Campbell Real Estate Company, located in North St. Louis. So that's actually where everything started for me, and then it progressed into me teaching some classes with St. Louis Public Schools, trying to encourage other people to go into the real estate industry. And I found this career path took me in a lot of different directions, like to daycare of all places. I ended up being the executive director of a child care center called Downtown Children's Center, and also Nestle Purina Child Development Center as executive director there as well, because Downtown Children's Center was looking for somewhere to move and relocate downtown St. Louis. And my experience being on Southside Day Nursery's board of directors, which was another child care center, along with the fact that I had the real estate experience, helped me to put the organization in a position to move into a brand new, spacious, you know, $2 to $3 million facility in downtown St. Louis, and they're still there, still working, still in place, still moving forward. And like I said, I've been in a bunch of different career paths, everything from healthcare, running a healthcare organization, to doing uh, some projects, like, say, for instance, working for St. Louis Public Schools, where I was the supervisor of adult technical education. I've been in a lot of different career paths. 30 years as a radio announcer in gospel music.
Mm.
That's a story all in itself, because I'm you wouldn't even believe it, but I was even involved in air traffic control at the time. So back in the 80s, when President Reagan fired all of the air traffic controllers and just disintegrated that union called PATCO, I was actually in training for air traffic control at the time. So I got caught up in that. And just to see that a president was able to put his hand on so many great guys and gals and end their careers, and then take away the point system where they weren't even able to get employment through the government, really woke me up to the point to where I realized whatever I did, I needed to make sure that it was totally unrelated, so that regardless of what was going on in the economy over the years, I would not be touched by it because of the connectivity. So that's why I actually have been involved in so many career paths that had absolutely nothing to do with each other, where radio had nothing to do with adult technical education. Adult technical education had nothing to do with real estate. Real estate property management, had nothing to do with healthcare. Healthcare had nothing to do with doing credit reports and things of that nature. Nothing had a relationship with each other. And I really found that out to be true when this pandemic hit, because I was able to continue with various sources of income, but I didn't have to necessarily be there in order to bring those income streams in. So even though it wasn't meant to become a test, I really got to see that my theory was the effective way to live.
Oh, okay. Now, when you talk about North St. Louis, for those listeners who aren't familiar with the St. Louis area, tell us a little bit about North St. Louis, the demographics, and is that the primary area that you work in?
Yes, pretty much 98, 99% of residents in North St. Louis are African American. This was an area that I grew up in, and I can tell you that when I grew up in North St. Louis in the 60s, there were plenty of businesses there. I mean, there were grocery stores. We called them confectionaries at the time.
Confectionaries, yeah.
There were pharmacies. There were record stores. There were shoe stores. There were clothing stores. You really didn't have to go out of the neighborhood to get access to any services. I mean, fast foods were there. There was Billy Burke's and Sarah Lou Cafe. All of this was in the neighborhood. So having a car wasn't a big deal, because you could walk to go to everything, including church. Many churches were in the area. But over the years, based on disinvestment in the city, primarily in North St. Louis, very little of that, or very little signs of that, even exist right now. So in order for the residents to get any type of services, they pretty much got to go out of the area in order to receive them. To go to the grocery store. I mean, it's even difficult to mail a letter, because there's no nearby post office. There's no nearby mailbox. So everything that you do, you have to go out of the area in order to participate in it, which is unfortunate. So we, along with other developers in the area, are working towards working on the housing issues in the area, trying to redevelop the area, bring new housing, whether it's rehab or brand new housing into the area. So that's our primary goal.
Yeah, I know, having myself grew up in St. Louis, I'm familiar with a lot of the areas that you talk about. I grew up in South St. Louis in the projects, and then we actually moved to North St. Louis, on the north side of town. And, I watched how that area has just basically went downhill over the years. I mean, those are some gorgeous brick homes that they had in North St. Louis. mean, big, huge, gorgeous brick homes. And I know the last time I was in St. Louis, I think I was driving around there, St. Louis Avenue, over in that area, and I just saw some houses. They looked like somebody had come in and dropped bombs on them, that just
Mhm.
falling down, falling apart. And these were, I mean, back in the day, these were very nice homes. And, to have an organization such as yours to go in and try to, rehab these things, I think is commendable. I mean, these homes are, I mean, there's, I mean, the build one of those particular type homes now would probably cost you anywhere probably $500,000. So
Yes.
be able to go in and take these homes and, redo neighborhoods. One of the things I remember, when we lived in South St. Louis, and I remember Lafayette Square, back,
Hmm.
that was the hood. We
Hmm.
play down there because it was right near the projects, and we used to go down there to Caroline Mission and play down there. But that whole area was the hood. It's where poor black people lived there. And then
Hmm.
over the years, you had gentrification come in, and all those old Victorian style homes were bought up, and now you can't touch a house over there probably for less than $500,000.
Right.
Remember back in the day, it was a primarily 100% black in all these older homes. So
Yeah.
and when I look at North St. Louis, and that was one of the questions that I had as well in terms of, do you see a lot of gentrification, the possibility for gentrification in North St. Louis over some course of time? Because with it primarily being 99% black,
Mhm.
outside of what they're doing, around the Spy Center area, where the old Pruitt Eichel area, do you see that as being the issue in the areas that you're working in right now?
Well, first of all, let me just say, up front that we welcome all people to
Hmm.
participate in this and help with the redevelopment of North St. Louis.
Hmm.
Secondly, if you look at what Northside Community Housing has done, when we approach developments, say for instance, there's a development that we developed in 2019 called St. Ferdinand Homes 2, and it's 43 rental units, a whole new development. Uh, some of it actually was a rehab of some existing properties. But what I wanted to point out is, although individuals that own homes in the area were asked if they wanted to sell their homes, nobody was forced out. No eminent domain took place.
Hmm.
And a lot of the homeowners decided that they still wanted to remain. And we built around them. And I can remember in one particular case that a person was approached about purchasing their home. They didn't want to sell. They didn't decide to sell until the construction was already taking place, and
Mm.
we ended up buying it. And since I didn't have a plan for their house at the time, I just turned it into a place where it was basically a walkway, a pathway. It's grass. We keep it cut. It's nice in between our buildings, but there's no house in that particular spot. So
Mm.
there's no forcing of people being made to leave the neighborhood. So, we take care in that consideration to make sure that if a person wants to stay, we're not forcing them to move.
Yeah. So, what is your development approach then? You like to try to go in and take like wholesale particular blocks or several blocks in the area in terms of making a major impact, or is it kind of you pick and choose? There's a house here, there's a house there. Do you have a strategy as it relates to that?
Well, it really depends on where and what the goal is at the time. Say, for instance, there's a development in North St. Louis right now that's known as Wayne Plaza and Alpha One. It's on Natural Bridge, uh, 5500 block of Natural Bridge in that area between Belton and Clara. And
Mm.
we will be taking that over next year. It'll be renamed Northside Heights. There are 49 units of housing in this particular development, and the management group that currently owns it just had some financial issues. But that's too many units to lose in North St. Louis. So we're working with the city of St. Louis and Missouri Housing Development Commission and putting together funds in order to get that particular property redeveloped, along with 16 units of our own that are scattered in the Greater Ville community.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're doing that. So, but then on top of that, you mentioned those wonderful, big, beautiful homes around St. Louis Avenue. We're working with SLDC and CDA, Lance Knuckles, as well as Neil Richardson. And we're working towards doing a neighborhood historic district. We're calling it the Sarah Lou Historic District. And it's St. Louis Avenue on the north, it's Sarah on the east, Kennelly on the south, and Lambden on the west. And we're looking at that particular area, and we're going after historic tax credits. And right now we're working with some consultants in order to gather all the information that we need in order to send that package off to the state, so that not only us as developers at Northside, but any other developers and or current homeowners will have access to those historic tax credits and help them be able to come up with some funds in order to redevelop those huge brick buildings that you're referring to.
Yeah. Now, for those individuals that aren't familiar with the tax credit project, and primarily, I guess, as it relates to the state of Missouri, walk us through what a tax credit application looks like in terms of that process, the amount of time that it takes, and how you use those tax credits to fund projects.
Well, see, for one thing, it's a long process, and so we're working through it right now. We actually have hired two consultants. Karen Bodie Baxter is working with us, as well as Landmarks is working with us in order to put together that application. One of the first things you have to do is you've got to be able to identify the area that you have of interest. And I just gave you the parameters of the area that we're actually looking at. But I wanted to point out that that area also does include the Sarah Lou Cafe as a part of the project that we're looking to renovate. That's one of the buildings that we want to see brought back to life. We don't know what the actual purpose will be, but for one thing for sure is we want to make sure that we get it back intact and stop the deterioration that's taking place. So one of the first things you have to do there is you got to get photographs. You got to take photographs of all of those parcels of land. That's over 220 parcels of land, and not just the front, but the front, the sides, and the rear of these properties. So fortunately, we were able to work with some students at Washington University that also went out, helped to take some of those photographs. And we have to get the streetscape photographs as well. And then we have to actually do individual documentation on each single parcel to be able to tell picture is, whether it's brick or whether it's frame or, what's going on with the property currently. And all of that information has to be put together and sent off to the state for their consideration, so
how often do they issue tax credits in a year in Missouri? I know
it's every couple of years.
Every couple of years.
Yeah, wow. Well, yeah, it's when it comes, I know you're in Illinois. When it comes to Illinois and Missouri, there are some differences, as far as those. But we're talking about historic tax credits.
Right,
we've also worked towards getting state tax credits and federal tax credits, and they may offer them on an annual basis. However, there's such competitiveness in the process till it may take years before your application is approved. For the one that we just recently did with the Coming Forth Northside Heights project, it was 3 attempts in order to do that, and then with the one St. Ferdinand Homes, it was 5 attempts to do that, so you can see that process is costly and lengthy.
Yeah. And I think one of the things a lot of people that aren't familiar with the process don't know when you talked about the cost in terms of pre-development costs, dollars that you spend with no guarantee that you're going to get the project funded. So it's really a crapshoot in a lot of instances. So, the team, the better the team that you put together, the better your odds are on having an opportunity to get tax credits, because you can spend several thousands of dollars in investment. So it's in one sense, it's kind of kept the small guys out, and
Mhm.
have, or have organizations that are established, such as yourself, that are able to compete. So I've seen that same thing here in Illinois. So it's very competitive again, but there are a lot of advantages once you're able to get the tax credit. So I understand that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
And I
Tell us.
think that it also needs to be something more than just a monetary situation. This is the area that I grew up in. So I
Hmm.
know what it looked like in its heyday. So I
Hmm.
want to do whatever I can to in order to make it look like it used to. Bring
Hmm.
back some of those buildings that are able to be saved. So
Hmm.
it's more than just a financial thing. It's a real commitment. And like I said, I'm not the only developer that's a part of this that feels that same way and working towards that as well.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the major projects that I guess you could say that you recall major that your organization has been involved in that you've completed.
Well, we've got about 250 units of housing throughout the city of St. Louis that is rental housing. Some of our housing, for those that are familiar with the city, is located in the Ville and in the Greater Ville, as well as the Mark Twain community, another community called Kingsway West. But what we're really doing right now that uh, I don't see anybody else actually doing is we've changed our housing model. The new housing that we've been working on, we've been building 3-bedroom houses for quite a while, but those 3 bedrooms have been on the second floor, and the living area, the kitchen, and everything downstairs. But now what we're doing is we're doing 2 bedrooms on the second floor, and we're having a bedroom on the first floor because we're building houses for people to be able to live longer in. This is the kind of housing that is accessible, especially for seniors and individuals that are disabled. We're calling the project Generations,
Mm.
so that family members can move into these homes and continue to dwell in those homes and have access to, on the first floor, access to their own restrooms, access to the kitchen. Doorways are wide enough. Uh, Accessibility, having
Mm.
access to the garage, some of the things that people don't think about as they age, but we
Hmm.
just want to make those properties in a way that is easier for people to be able to maneuver around without necessarily having to move to get those particular accommodations. We're trying to build those already in place.
So when you design these homes in terms of the exterior aspects of it, do you try to keep them in line in what's currently there, or you just have a brand new model where you're going in and just saying this is, because you had a lot of older brick homes in a lot of those areas, that you go in and just put up homes that are, I guess, more modern, or do you try to still fit them in with the current structures?
Yeah, well, a lot of the homes that we're building are framed homes.
Mm-hmm.
They may have some brick veneer in places here and there, depending on what the codes require in the city of St. Louis. And then there are other homes that are brick homes that are existing homes that we're simply rehabbing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we're bringing those up to code as well.
Yeah.
And so
So
it really just depends on where you are and what the need is.
So is everything your organization does it all rental, or do you do any homes for sale as well?
Both, actually. Even the homes that we that have been for rental uh, eventually turn into for sale homes.
Yeah.
We were one of the first projects in the state of Missouri to have low income housing tax credit homes. And so after 30 years of those homes being under us and for rent, then those homes, after we send an application to the state agency for consideration, we can then sell those homes. So we try to sell those homes to the homeowners.
Hmm.
They're actually residing in those homes. And just before we get to that 30-year point, we'll take them through some home ownership classes, try to connect them with credit counseling if that's what the need is, try to connect them with banks and mortgage companies, to be able to purchase, and whatever incentives are going on at the time when it comes to down payment assistance. So we have a person, Jackie Stokes, that's our community development assistant that works to connect those families with those opportunities.
Hmm. When you talked about that, the homes, when you sell these homes, are you selling for under the market value, or do you try to get market value because you've had individuals that have lived in them so long? What type of incentives do you offer those buyers?
Again, in both situations, say for instance, some of the ones that we own ourselves, we've already got permission from the Missouri Housing Development Commission to sell them at a really, really low rate, where they may even be a forgivable loan associated with it if they remain in those homes for like 7 years.
Mm.
So you'll possibly buy a home for $80,000. But then we're also constructing brand new homes, which are still affordable. We did 4 homes in 2022 that we sold. These were 3-bedroom homes, and they were in the area of 145,000. So still affordable, when you consider what's going on in the metropolitan area.
Yeah, and the cost of construction, that's very affordable.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked about selling those homes, are there any other incentives that the city of St. Louis offers those homeowners that like to purchase your all's homes?
Yes, there's down payment assistance, and the city has been, very helpful in, connecting us with the people and the agencies, and they actually get the funding, and then they work with different organizations in the city that provide the home ownership training. You may know some of the agencies as the Urban League, Beyond Housing. I can't think of the organization as well as I know it in Lee May because the name changed. It's the Housing Partnership. Housing Partnership is also one of the agencies that work in the city in order to provide that, and they get assistance through the city of St. Louis for those purposes.
Yeah, I know. Growing up, the area like around Sarah, over there in North St. Louis, which was terrible back in the day, and now you drive over there now, and it's like, my goodness, you see all these new homes,
Right.
and it's not too far from where St. Louis U is at. They bought up a lot of property in that area. And so they've actually been, I guess, a major contributor as well as it relates to economic development in those particular areas.
And there's a lot of tiny homes that are coming up in the area as well, so especially for veterans. So I'm going to be having some conversations with those folks that are responsible for that to see, is there any kind of partnerships we can be working towards since we're doing housing in the same area.
So in those tiny homes, what's the square footage of those? Seems like I saw some of those down in Texas or somewhere.
I don't know specifically. I've never been in them, but we decided that somewhere between Thanksgiving and New Year's, we were going to get together and meet, and I would get to actually tour one of those homes so that I could find out that information.
Do you have any pushback from anybody in any of the areas that you work in terms of neighborhood groups that maybe oppose to what you're doing, or is it pretty much a buy-in basically wherever you guys go?
No, here's the reason why. We do a lot of community engagement. So nobody can say I didn't know. I mean, we are constantly before crowds of people. We're constantly passing out literature. We're constantly a part of email blasts. We're constantly making people aware of things on our Facebook page. So we're doing everything we can do to get the word out about what it is that we're doing. As a matter of fact, one of the most recent things I did was just basically had people to email me and say, if we are able to bring the Sarah Lou Cafe back, what would you like to see? What would you like to see? I heard a donut shop. Somebody wanted a Head Start program to take place there. Somebody else wanted the actual restaurant that used to be there to be there. So we try to get that input, so that we can, really find out what the community's interest is in and what they would like to see. We don't want to do this all on our own. As I mentioned to you, as a developer still working with the city, well, the only thing that I would say for that Sarah Lou Cafe is to have housing on the second floor, but what's going to be downstairs, I don't know, because that's going to be something that's going to come from the community. The community is going to have to tell us what the need is, what the desire is. That's not a decision that I or Northside plans on making.
No, when you said about donuts, I'm just reminded, before the Krispy Kreme, you have the donut shop over on Cass and Grant that were there for decades, even when
I remember that.
And those donuts were hot. You get them over there, they were hot. This was before Krispy Kreme was even on the scene. And it was like the place to go in order to get donuts in St. Louis back then. I don't believe it's there any longer, but
it is not.
Yeah, but it was like the place to go and to get donuts there in St. Louis. Now, when you talk about that, you guys are all over, but primarily doing things in Northside. Have you ventured over into South St. Louis, or any long range plans to do any development in that area?
We have not in South St. Louis as of yet, but we are working to get across Delmar. So, and that's going to be in our first project. We'll actually be building a home at 5175 Washington.
Okay.
So that'll get us that. So that's our first attempt to get on the other side of Delmar. And I know you're familiar with that concept of the Delmar divide, where one side of Delmar is affluent and the other side is not. So we are working towards expanding our reach and working in some of the other areas.
Yeah. I used to have an office over on Delmar in St. Louis, right across on Delmar. I think it was a big office building, and they've turned them into apartments right across the street from the my goodness, the Delmonico's.
Okay.
Yeah, the little restaurant over there.
Yeah, it was more recently a Fields Foods, a grocery store, but I think they recently went out of business. I mean, within the last couple of months. And there are office buildings across the street. I don't know if they turned them into apartments or not, but there is office space. The building is still there, still looks great.
Yeah, it was a big. I don't know how many stories was in that building, but it was a nice building back then. Years ago, I published a newspaper, and we actually were distributed in St. Louis, and they had an office there in the St. Louis area. So I was, and I said I don't get out to St. Louis as much as I want to. There's a lot of stuff going on there right now, but I'm just happy to see, some of the work that an organization such as yours is doing in that area. When you talked about the number of units that you all have, do you all manage those units yourself, or you have a management company that takes care of the day-to-day operations of those?
Yes, we have a management company that we contract with, which is Fox Grove Property Management. Yeah, my staff is a whopping staff of one other person, myself and one other person. And as a result of that, we have a property management company we contract with. We work with consultants that help us to do our property development, and they, get the contractors that we award contracts to in order to do the actual construction or rehab or contact the subs, so, and then we got a plethora of volunteers that help us as well. So Northside would not be as successful as it has been without help, from those volunteers.
When you talked about the contractors that you guys try to involve minority contractors, but basically Black contractors in the projects, and or those individuals that live within the areas themselves, and how successful have you been in getting that done? And is there a shortage of qualified firms that you can work with down there?
There has been a shortage of qualified firms, but every time I find out about a company that's interested in doing work in the area, I always contact our general partners whoever we're working with on the project to get their name together so that they can go through whatever process is necessary, because there are laws like Davis-Bacon, and there's different things where people may not be familiar with in the
Mm-hmm.
way they go about paying their employees, but you got
Right.
to pay them a certain way and a
And,
certain wage in order to be a part of this project.
yeah, you got
So I put them in touch with the professionals that know all the ins and outs of that. But yeah, we
mm-hmm.
always welcome the contractors, especially minority contractors, in order
Mm-hmm.
to do the work.
Yeah,
In
normally with those government funds, you got to have certified payroll, and so it
right,
kicks. Yeah,
the
it's
prevailing wage and the
yeah,
whole works.
yeah.
Right.
Davis Bacon kicks in. So yeah,
Yeah.
I know I had a friend of mine. Actually, it was Demetrius Johnson's brother. I know he had built several houses on Page Avenue, Gary, and I don't think he's still. I don't know if he's doing any construction down there right now, but I know he had probably 10 years or so ago. He had was building a lot of houses over there in North St. Louis, primarily on Page Avenue. Uh,
Okay.
and I think he stopped for right now. But it's always good to see because this is an opportunity for young kids to get in some of the unions, uh, be-
Mhm.
and to learn a trade. Because with that trade, even if in fact if you're not working for an employer, it gives you an opportunity to be able to start your own business or have a side hustle. It's
Right.
when people putting up screen doors or building decks or putting in doors or putting in cabinets. Uh,
Hmm.
Trimming out a house. So once you have that skill, if in fact if you are in the union, it's a good thing. And I'm not sure exactly in terms of unions in St. Louis, in terms of how difficult is it for young blacks to get in the unions down there. If that's something do you delve into, or do you hear about
I
any?
have not. I have not personally delved into it, but I do see, young people that are connecting with the plumbers and the pipe fitters and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Especially with schools like Rankin,
Right,
that's in
check,
town.
yes.
So I do
Mhm.
see, and are familiar with some young people that have made some inroads to getting into the field and getting to work with the unions through that process.
Mhm. What do you see your organization say 5 years from now, Mike?
5 years from now, well, I'll be old,
Older, at least, yeah.
hopefully alive, hopefully
Mhm.
alive. But 5 years from now, just doing what we can to increase the housing situation, primarily in North St. Louis City. And we're not trying to do this as a Lone Ranger organization. I welcome other developers that have a heart for North St. Louis and want to see housing, because there's no way that we can do it alone. And we don't expect to. But we do see a need to be able to bring in more housing and some commercial development and some other partners that also have an interest in seeing North St. Louis flourish, just like you mentioned Lafayette Square in the city of St. Louis. I remember the condition that Lafayette Square was in,
Mhm.
as we say back in the day, and look at what it's become. At this point, as far as the housing stock is concerned, North St. Louis does not have that much old housing stock. But for the stock that we do have, we want to do what we can to preserve that, as well as bring in new development and fill in some of these vacant lots, with not just housing, but parks, have places for people to have recreation and gardens. Just make it a community, which is
Yeah.
what we're interested in seeing take place. So I hope that North Side Community Housing plays a pivotal role in making sure that that process continues. So we've been here through the hard time and the bad time and the pandemic and all of this, so we hope to be able to be one of those organizations that continue to move forward and push the charge for housing and resources for people in North St. Louis, because it's very much richly deserved.
Yeah. I know we talked a little bit earlier, kind of off the camera, about the major project they have going over there in the old Pruitt-Igoe area. that being the governmental spy center the U.S. federal government is building, which is a $1 billion plus project. And I guess in terms of all the outline development that could possibly take place, does your organization have any interest in maybe partnering up and doing something in that particular area?
Well, that's not for. It's almost a stone's throw from where we're actually doing projects. One
Okay.
of our next projects that we're doing is actually building 6 homes in an area called Jeff Vanderloop, which
Yeah.
is very close to St. Louis place where all of this new development is taking place. So we're already on the fringes of it anyway. So yeah, we would welcome that opportunity.
Mm.
And for those of your listeners and viewers that are not totally familiar with the area where Northside is located, just let them know, or let me let them know that this is the area where Chuck Berry grew up, the area where Tina Turner grew up, the area where Arthur Ashe grew up,
Dick
uh,
Gregory
Billy Davis Jr., Dick Gregory. All of these greats came out of this community.
from the high
So
school. Yeah.
going to Sumner High School and living around this general area. So you've got all of that greatness. And I'm here to tell you that there are young people that have that greatness in them that live in the area right now as we speak. So we've got to do those things to be able to help them and encourage them to do some of the great things that we've seen other people that came from this area. And I also wanted to mention Grace Brumbry, who
Opera singer, right?
passed away. Yeah, recently passed away, and she was also from the area.
Yeah. My mother went to Sumner High School. When I look at her yearbooks, I know she's really good friends with Ronald Gregory, who she went to high school with, which is Dick Gregory's brother. And when we sit down and we talk about those, all the rich history from Sumner High School, because I believe it was the first black high school that was built west of the Mississippi
Uh-huh.
in the country, and there's just such a rich history of individuals that have attended that school. And Red Fox, he's from St. Louis. I mean, there's
Mhm.
quite a few individuals. Um, so let me ask you just a couple more questions for you, Mike, and I'll let you go. But I appreciate you taking the time, uh,
Mhm.
to do this interview with me. I know there's another major developer down there that does a lot from an apartment standpoint. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to work with them, but that's McCormick Barron. Have you guys had any opportunity to work with them, or they're kind of doing things that are maybe outside the realm of the areas that you want to work in?
No, I've never had the opportunity to work with them. I'm familiar with their developments and the history uh, of McCormick Barron. I've watched them do projects both in the city, as well as in other cities throughout the country. So I'm very familiar with it, with the organization. Richard Barron, the principal there, I can remember early on when he had a vision to do some work on Shodo. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and now look at what has happened with that area, where it
Mm-hmm.
has been totally redeveloped.
Yeah.
So I see their work, they do good work, in the area. But personally, I have not had the opportunity to
Yeah.
meet with them and discuss anything.
Yeah. Even when I look at parts of South St. Louis, where I grew up at, we grew up in the Peabody projects. They've torn down a lot of, a lot of those areas around there, the Darts and the Webbies, they're gone. And then, those areas, off of Shodo,
Yeah.
not a lot of development. I mean, these are all areas that, as a kid, that I grew up in. And to look at these areas now, just to know that one thing is that the closer you get to downtown, is where you start seeing a lot of the development is taking place. I know Tony Thompson, who has his office over on, I used to call it
Washington.
4th Street, but it's
Oh,
Tucker now.
Washington. Yeah, Washington and Tucker.
Yeah, yeah, but it was 12th Street back in the day, but it's Tucker.
Correct. Correct.
But that whole area downtown, back in the day with Levine Hat Factory and all these big old industrial buildings are all loft apartments right now. And I know they've had a few issues, with some rowdy individuals down there, but I think eventually they're going to get that cleaned up because there's just
Yeah.
too much money at stake. Last question. The current administration, have you had an opportunity to work with the current mayor And is she in favor of some of the things that you guys are doing? I believe that's Vervis Jones' daughter. I can't remember what her.
Tashara Jones.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, when she first got into office, one of the things that she said was that her focus was going to be the redevelopment of North St. Louis. And even though I have not had conversations with her about it, I have absolutely had contact with the staff at SLDC, St. Louis Development Corporation, CDA, LRA, Land Reutilization Authority, Community Development Agency, and they have been very receptive to us being one of the primary developers in the area because they're very familiar with our history and our commitment and our ability to actually implement a plan and follow it all the way through. So the city has been very supportive to us in that project. So I am happy to say that and real happy to report that.
Great. Mike, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything I might have missed that you wanted to bring up? Any points or topics that I might not have touched on?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. Yeah, would love to have you to come back home and let me give you a driving tour, to show you some of the development that's taking place. I think you'd be very surprised to see some of the development that is taking place throughout North St. Louis. And there's much more to come.
Yeah. I owe a visit down there. I know Mike Roberts. We're supposed to get together the next time I come to town, and I like to maybe come in and take a look at what you guys are doing as well. So I'm going to make it a point, probably within the new year, to get down there and to just spend a day down there and have some nostalgia, if you will, to drive around. And when you talk about the project on Natural Bridge, I actually knew someone that lived in those apartments years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And those were very nice apartments back then, and they were always well maintained and well kept. So I see you guys taking on a project like that. And then I just think about Fairgrounds Park, back in the day,
right,
when I played baseball down there. It was like the place to be during the summertime. The League, the Matthew Dickey Boys Club, all the particular teams, and at the nighttime at the games, how packed the park would be, to come out and watch. To watch us play. We were one of the premier teams in St. Louis back then, and it was a lot of fun, to be over there. So, and to be able to bring that rich history back, and it's just so much that can be done over there. My last question, though, too, I will say this: whatever happened with Carter Carburetor down there, the big, massive building that was? Did they actually? I know it was some point they were getting some development funds in order to go in and get rid of environmental issues. And I think they're talking about a golf course or something down there.
Correct. That's the Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
That's working with that. You know the name is the Herbert Hoover Boys Club.
Right.
So the name has changed. Flint Fowler is the executive director. And yes, they are working towards developing that area that's right across the street from their headquarters. And it will be at a place where young and old can come and do golfing, putt golf, things of that nature in the area, which is going to be something really new for the area. And I think it's going to bring a different crowd and a different feel to North St. Louis.
Yeah. So have they raised those buildings yet? Because I know they said vacant for decades. Oh, great.
The buildings are gone. And the environmental studies have taken place, and I've heard that there are conversations with the different organizations that deal in golf, and they're working with them in order to develop the plan so that they can bring it into fruition.
Yeah, a friend of mine named Tommy Tucker, he owns a property right over on Jefferson in St. Louis Avenue. It sits right
St. Louis Avenue in Grand.
Yeah, St. Louis Avenue and Grand, exactly.
Yeah.
He's owned it, for decades.
Forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's Tucker's fast. He's probably had about 10 different businesses.
I remember that, and it's still there.
Yeah, he still owns it, as a matter of fact. We talk rather frequently. So, well, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Just to answer, first of all, to take my call and, found you on Facebook. We're Facebook friends. Never really had an opportunity to talk. So there are a lot of individuals out there. One of the reasons that I started this show was to highlight individuals such as yourself throughout the country that are doing positive things that people can glean from, and to be able to say, hey, I think we can do that in our city. So I commend you for the job that you're doing there in St. Louis, and especially in my old hood and stomping grounds, if you will.
Right.
So that's
Right.
really good. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can stay on for just a minute here, Mike. I'm going to
Okay.